Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ed Greer.
I'm Ron Swallow.
And I'm producer Bill.
And today we're giving you another episode off of a previous episode. That's right, guys. We're going to talk about the greatest scores in movie history.
We've done soundtracks, so we've got that out of the way, and now it's time to give props to the composers that make our movie dreams come true.
Yeah, and it's going to be great because I'm going to be like, this is some of the stuff that I remember liking, and you guys will probably know who did it. It's going to be awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's totally fine. I think in general, people maybe don't pay as much attention to film scores as film nerds do, which is why a conversation like this is, appropriate.
Yeah, it's also interesting because it's so important to the movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've seen those weird TikTok videos or weird YouTube videos where someone changes the score to a scene and you're like, this is a way different scene now.
It really is part of selling the atmosphere, just like lighting or just like anything. The score is part of it. Speaking of which, I just first off the top of my head, out of the box, the score to Aliens. I don't know if James Horner did the score for Alien. I don't really remember, but I do know that he did the score for Aliens. And that score is insane. It's got all that military trilling and just different like marchy sort of sounds and stuff. It really puts you in the mind frame of you're a soldier. Like the music sounds like a march. And when it gets crazy and it starts trilling up with all the horns and when the shit is getting real and then there's acid all over your shotgun and you're just backing into the elevator, the sounds that are playing in there are so discordant that you really are there. You are there.
They're right on top of us, man. They're right on top of us. Yeah. So just to clarify, he did not do the score for the original Alien. And that's a really good one to lead off with, because if you look at Aliens versus Alien, same subject matter, same lead actress, same villain, and two wildly different movies. And I think the score reflects that.
Yeah, the score for Alien is very pensive and very in the back. Mm-hmm. It doesn't overpower you with notes or anything. It's kind of it's almost like an early A24 score or something, like a very eerie sounds.
Yeah, almost atonal. I mean, it exists in that world that Ridley Scott created, which is almost understated. It as much as it takes place on a giant deep spaceship, that movie doesn't really make a big deal of itself. Like everything happens and it looks beautiful, but like it's not the kind of bombastic movie that a James Cameron action film is. And Aliens, the second in the series, is very much a James Cameron action film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it turned out it was a guy named Jerry Goldsmith. He also did The Omen in 1976, so clearly he has some horror chops.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Just finding out how rhythmic you want to be and how scary, like the Damien music has to be like rhythmic Gregorian chanting. Oh, Damien, oh no, fuck you, push the maid off a fucking
ladder. I believe those are the words to that score. They've just been removed from it. Yeah. When you find the lyric track.
I mean, if we're going to talk Jerry Goldsmith, that's an interesting name because I don't believe he's around anymore. I think he passed away a little while ago. But that was a guy who really defined a lot of the film sound of the 70s and 80s. So he, I think, most significantly was composer on all of the theatrical Star Trek films, at least for like the original run that had the original cast, possibly leading up into the Next Generation. But he was the Roddenberry cast was definitely Jerry Goldsmith. Also scored Planet of the Apes, Logan's Run, Total Recall.
Wow.
The entire Rambo franchise. Well, again, until they relaunched Rambo, the entire Rambo franchise.
Oh, and
So,
one of our favorites,
mm.
Air Force One.
Oh, that's an interesting callback to our greatest action heroes episode.
He was supplying when he said, get off my plane, and he kicked that fool. The score that came up, that's Jerry Goldsmith dropping the needle drop on you from.
But so
the weird part was it was they were gonna do It's Raining Men. And then decided not to do that. So
that's what
I don't know if you guys knew that.
At the end of Batman '89 too, when the Joker falls, but then they hired Prince to do the score, and they didn't get the rights.
It's ridiculous.
I do want to give props to Jerry Goldsmith, though. A great score that is not really of a piece with his other work is LA Confidential, which uses some of those jazz notes, like big horns, but in that very kind of like 1940s mystery noir way. Sets an amazing scene for that movie and is not the kind of like horror action kind of understated but like driving sort of music that he usually works with.
Well, what are some of the movies that you remember because of their score besides fucking Jaws, for Christ? Although we can talk about Jaws a little bit. The two notes.
Yeah, why don't we talk about Jaws to get it out, because we do have to talk about it.
The two notes is super great, and the whole old saw about, it's used as a proxy for the actual creature, yada yada yada. Yeah. But I mean, when you know music that well, to be able to know that you need to strip it down to two notes, that's pretty brave to me. Like when you know music that big and you go like, nah, the best tool for this is ba ba. That's real genius. That's real musical genius.
No, it is, and I think the guy who working today works in that style often is Hans Zimmer, which again is sort of an obvious one. If you look at sort of modern working composers, he might be the best one. But he's a guy who is so musically gifted that he knows when to strip it back and when to work with, single notes, dual notes, really understate the music in a way to let it shine, because you're not trying to complicate it in such a way that it is doing more than it needs to do. But yeah, I think Jaws is the perfect example of music that doesn't do more than it needs to do.
Yeah, it gets pretty heavy when the shark comes out of the water.
Well, yes.
And what you were talking, I guess since we're talking about a little horror stuff, I gotta say, I remember The Shining having scary sound. And I couldn't tell you exactly what the theme is or what the, any of that sort of thing is, but I know it scared the crap out of me.
Well, as I'm thinking about it, I don't know that The Shining like has themes or motifs, as they would call it in music. It's all, I believe that music is just deployed in kind of like a jump scare way. Like when you see things, you get the shrieking violins or like the big horn notes, and like when the blood is coming out of the elevator, you have some sort of weird sustained like I almost want to say it's a single note, but it's not like when I think very famously, like when Danny is riding his tricycle around the hotel, you're just getting the natural sound of the squeaking wheels and his feet on the pedals and this and that. But then in moments like where you see, the people in costume in room 237 or whatever it is, that's where the music kind of fades up again in that very, atonal way to just highlight the horror of what you're seeing.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Do you think that is this, like when film composers look at an actual score job, do you think that they think of those jobs as the same or worth the same or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Do you think that, they know music, so that they go, you got another A24? So what are you gonna do? Take a wet banana and smear it across a timpani drum for 50 hours again and charge them 100 million?
I'm trying to think. There's a famous story of an action movie, and I can't quite remember what it was, but like they had temped in the score. So, for people who don't know, just to do this really quickly, when editors are editing the movie, so much of your rhythm of editing is dependent on how you're using sound and music. But a lot of the times when the editors start working, the music isn't written yet. And in fact, for a lot of movies, the music isn't written until after the editor is pretty much done with their job. And then the composer writes the music to enhance what the editor has done. And there's some back and forth there. But usually a lot of the editing happens before the music comes in. So what happens is the editors will pull literally scores from other movies to just give a feel of like what it's going to be. And I know that at least for one movie, the editor used a temp track, which is what they call those tracks. The composer then came in, wrote, oh, you know what it is? This is why I was connecting it. It's Kubrick. So for 2001, they were using classical music as temp music. And then Kubrick hired a composer to score the entire movie. And he wrote the entire score. And Kubrick realized he'd rather use the classical music because the score made it worse. So that famous Thus Spake Zarathustra, that dun, 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 when you see the monolith, that's a piece of music from like the 1800s. And they originally were just using that as a placeholder. But Kubrick had to hear the score that they paid for before he went, no, we're gonna go with the temp music.
Well, in that case, it's like it's kind of like how Conan, right? Oliver Stone does the whole draft about Conan being part of mutants in the future, fighting a giant revolution and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And casts of thousands smashing each other in canyons, you know what I'm saying? Just the biggest thing you could ever see. And then John Milius said, yeah, I paid him for the screenplay and I gave him screenplay credit because for me reading that fever dream, I was able to come up with this simple story of Conan. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes you got to see the opposite to know what you want, or you have to get some choices to know what you want.
Yeah. So here's one that kind of comes to mind as we're talking about, that whole temp score versus score written for the music and actually horror movies as well. The Exorcist. So the original Exorcist has that I always get it confused because Halloween, also a great score written by John Carpenter. You almost can't do it with your mouth though, but if you think about it, The Exorcist has that really ominous, almost xylophone score.
Oh yeah, it's called something bells. Hold on.
Tubular. It's called
Yeah.
Tubular Bells.
Yeah.
And so that music is so associated with that movie, but that was actually a composition that predated the movie. It was a British musician named Mike Oldfield who wrote this, non-lyrical musical composition on an instrument called the tubular bell, which is this really weird take on a xylophone. It's essentially a xylophone made out of like hollow pipes. And so he released it. It was actually like a best-selling album in the UK. And the producers of The Exorcist bought the rights to make it the main theme of that movie. But I always think that's hilarious that the main theme of The Exorcist, which in context is so unsettling, was actually just made as like easy listening music by a musician.
Well, I mean, it just shows you that like once the art gets out of your hands, it's in somebody else's hands. You know what I mean? Like people call it the death of the author or whatever. It's just no. When you put something out, you are not in charge of how it's received. You thought it was easy listening. It is the stuff of my nightmares. And it's the rare artist who can like make money even though their stuff is grotesque on some level. You know what I'm saying? Like you make something that you think is beautiful, people find it grotesque, you still find a way to sell it. Hats off to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
I love that stuff. And you know what? Legend has it that dude like keeps working on that song, or he keeps re-recording it with more and more tracks as more and more tracked instruments became available. He went back and did it over and over again with more and more tracks, so he wouldn't have to like layer them in that like 4-track way or whatever the technology was at the time. He was able to lay it over and over again with more and more, kind of like the whole Phil Spector of it all. He started getting obsessed with how much how he could individually tune each thing without having to erase any data or whatever. The crazy part about it is all of that is like very George Lucasian,
Good call.
You know what I mean? Just this sort of like, as soon as I get more tools, I'll do more work. You know what I mean?
Well, speaking of George Lucas, I feel like, we got the Jaws discussion out of the way. We should almost just get the entire John Williams discussion out of the way. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's just cop to the fact, greatest film composer of all time, bar none. He wrote E.T., Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Superman the movie, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, pretty much every great Spielberg movie he was the composer on, plus a dozen other great franchises beside. Like, the guy is just an absolute legend, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and John Williams is the best part of the prequels, which, that's saying something.
Well, don't diminish it like that. That music is great. Let's do it. Let's play a game. I think favorite piece of Star Wars music, even if you can't really name the like piece or whatever, like because that Duel of the Fates, that all that shit that's happening.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's
good. Way up there. I think that might be mine out of the whole canon. And I'm talking about the Imperial March. I'm talking about all type of shit. The Duel of the Fates is up there to me because it was the only thing keeping me tethered in the scene. You know what I'm
saying? It's good. It's really good.
It's powerful. I mean, I wouldn't want to listen to it every day, but like when you wake up to it, it's like, I'm about to fight the fates.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I like Darth Vader's boom, 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 boom. Which one is that called?
That's the Imperial March, right?
Yeah, I think that's the Imperial March.
Yeah. I like that. I like the Tatooine score that has like the little bit of the darker flair to it. Like what's playing when he finds Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's dead bodies.
Yeah.
Well, no, and then they call back to it like in episode 8 when he fades, and and you're just left looking at the two suns. And I can't hum it off the top of my head because it is more of like a swell. It's like an orchestral swell. But that's the one that gives me goosebumps. It's almost like a middle ground between the big adventure, the one that starts the movie every time, and like the Imperial March. It's like this slow, more somber tone.
Yeah. I want to give him a shout out, not to veer too far from Star Warsville, but like I got to give him a shout out for the non-shark parts of Jaws. Like when you're supposed to feel like tally ho, let's go do this stuff. Even in 1975, that's some corny ass music. If you're gonna play some tally ho, let's go, let's be on the seas music, that's some corny ass shit. And I'll listen to that part when they got their get up and go and they got 2 barrels in them and they're chasing them and all that shit. I'll listen to that any old day. He manages to make it cool.
You as a black man don't trust sea shanties? I don't understand.
Yeah. How many people heard a sea shanty right before some real terrible shit happened to them? So yeah, dude.
What's that I hear on the horizon? Slowly getting louder.
And either any role you want to play with that pirate shit is all bad. It's bad for somebody.
No, it's all terrible.
But yeah, you know what I'm saying? I felt like he did good in the parts that aren't just duh, you know what I'm saying? There's crescendos in there. There's triumphal moments when characters do something cool. There's nice little stings when the shark comes out of the water and they talk about we need a bigger boat. There's a lot of work going on that isn't just the 2 notes and the simple theme.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think John Williams deploys flutes in a way that's probably better than any other composer. Because that's usually what you get when you get that kind of rollicking good time with the trills. Like it's always this very light staccato flute music. And like you'll see that in everything from his score to like Catch Me If You Can, even to Jurassic Park, like in the lighter moments of Jurassic Park. It's like there's something about it makes sense because most of Spielberg's movies are in one way or another chase movies, but there's something about the chase scene that John Williams always finds a way to make it light and bouncy. And I think that kind of comes down to instrument selection. Like he loves using like flutes and oboes and like, higher, more shrill woodwinds to really get your blood racing, as opposed to people who might use like pounding timpani drums or something. It's a nice contrast with the way that like his darker, scarier music feels way more full and way more bass heavy. It's like in the moments when we're running, Indiana Jones, another great example. Like in the moments when we're running, everything gets high and short and quick.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like, because I took a music appreciation class, and I gotta say, it's kind of cool when you learn a few of those things that you never really thought about, like specific notes sounding more exciting or making you more sad. Like literally, there are notes that sound more sad. And I believe they're flats. It's been a while, so I don't remember exactly. But it's one of those things that's like wild to think about, that this guy not only learned everything about music, but then learned how to elicit emotions from a scene and enhance that scene with that music so that the emotions were like brought forth. That's wild to me. Like, I assume that when a guy's working on something like this, that's what they're doing, right? They go, okay, I want this emotion from this. Here is a sound that comes from that. Now let's turn it into something more flowing and orchestra, with an orchestra or whatever. And I just, it's, like, it's wild to me because basically the only sounds in my head are screams and and I don't know, moans, maybe a little bit of moaning, some worries. I don't know, whatever sound worry makes, that's in my head,
Inside your head is Event Horizon and shit.
Oh, but it's just wild to me that these guys did this, and then not only did it, but consistently John Williams has nailed everything he's done. And
yeah, I mean, it's incredible that he has like written an era defining score in like 6 decades. You know what I mean? Like in 6 different decades. It's like every 5 to 10 years, there's a new John Williams score that's just like a new pinnacle in soundtrack. And frankly, it's quite sad. He now has retired from writing new scores. But apparently Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, whatever this new Indiana Jones movie is, he is back for that. And so Spielberg, I think, got him out of retirement to do one last score. Or was that The Fabelmans? Because I think he did also score The Fabelmans. See, now I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's scoring Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny.
Well, I mean, I think that'd be appropriate, obviously. I mean, I would kind of hate to hear some, like, just imagine, okay,
Yeah,
it's the dude who did 48 Hour score, and he comes on. It's like bing 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 bing. It's just all steel drums from now on in Indiana Jones.
Well, what's really funny is often, because he has sort of established the music for a lot of different franchises, people do pick up his work and run with it, and it's never as good as when he does it.
Yeah. So, we were talking about James Horner earlier. That was James Horner that did the 48 Hours.
What were you going to say, Ron?
Well, you made that sound, and it made me think of Deliverance.
You're not wrong. That banjo riff in Deliverance is one of the most iconic music riffs in movies.
And it's so funny because to us, we hear that sound and it's funny. And the thing that's happening in that moment is not funny.
Well,
it's not in that moment. It's been laid.
Yes,
it's been associated with that by proxy.
Yeah.
But
even then,
you get what you're saying.
The stuff that's happening in that it's just interesting how that, because that's iconic. Do you guys know who did the score to Deliverance?
No.
The guy Steve Mandel did the score
Isn't
to Deliverance.
That's awesome. Well, it's fantastic. I just wanted to point that out, and I also wanted to point out to remember what movie it was from. I looked up "You Got a Pretty Mouth," and I don't think.
Jesus.
I don't think that's cool. Like, I feel bad about it. And
no, I
that's
mean
where it's coming from.
that riff, I don't know what else to call it. Like that little piece of music has become so synonymous with being raped by swamp hillbillies.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how else to put it. That like you hear it in like there have been Simpsons episodes where they just use that one piece of music and it's like that is the joke. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, we know
that
what
piece of
joke they're
music-
making. You don't even
Right.
have to say it.
Right. It's
Yeah. Oh, and just to
crazy.
be clear, I don't think anybody here knows who did the score to Deliverance, but Mandel and Weisberg did the dueling banjos part, where it was like the guy comes in, and which was kind of interesting because, like, okay, if we're gonna talk about this, we're gonna damn talk about it. The
Okay.
kid is obviously supposedly some evidence of so-called inbreeding, even though these are like Arkansas dudes going to like deeper Arkansas or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like these guys are not more evolved than the knuckle draggers they're running into, but let's say they're trying to make that point. So they go and see this kid on the porch that's inbred or whatever, and they say or had some physical differences. And so, but that kid living his life because he could play the hell out of banjo. And the dude is playing his guitar and he's playing his banjo, and they're really communicating. Maybe for one of the first time this kid's had in a week. The rest of these people around him aren't geniuses and savants. They probably leave him fallow there for hours at a time. But these city folk come in, they play, and we can talk, we can have fun. And that image of friendliness is utterly shattered later when it really
Jesus, is
comes
it?
down to it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I just think that there's some part of the music is part of that. The music is part of sealing that to make that violation happen even worse.
Yeah.
You know, that happens worse. I think that music interlude is part of what makes it as horrifying as it can actually be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does teach you a very important thing, and that's that if you want to have a musically talented child, to bang your sister. So
Ron, sometimes I
think-
think you might learn the wrong lessons from movies. I don't know.
Oh,
Sometimes.
you know what?
He
You're
wouldn't be
right.
the
I
first
think-
one. Meanwhile, I'm trying to be a coke dealer, so I can be like Tony Montana, baby.
Oh man,
shit.
I was like, I just wanted to have a. Okay, that's ridiculous.
Push it to the limit. Limit. That's Ron's theme of this episode. Push it to the limit. No, but I do agree that Push It to the Limit is a great needle drop in the in the soundtrack of Scarface. And I do think that one of the main things that made Scarface pretty cool is it had good music. I think it would be more on our soundtracks episode than the score episode, but I think the score was pretty good. And all the songs, like I think even that lonely synth riff that plays after Tony's dead, that cements that this world is gone, and it has these synthetic claps in it that like the thunderbolt coming through to split the clouds over Tony's existence as he's dead or whatever the fuck. That shit is all synth, and I think that's score. So I think that's actually score, not a song.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on that. It would be score, and you get me thinking with mentions of synth, like the greatest synth score ever done, Vangelis for Blade Runner.
Oh,
That
hardcore.
I mean, that original Blade Runner score is so weird and so of its time. Like it's all at once so 80s and so futuristic and so unlike almost any other movie, which I think describes all of Blade Runner.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also raise you the Tangerine Dream score that for like Thief and shit like that when Michael Mann starts coming on the scene and it's the 80s and it's like it's like Vangelis is like the cloud side of the synth wave and Tangerine Dream was like the ground level, street level
The
version of it.
Yeah, exactly. I get that.
But they're called Tangerine Dream.
Yeah, which is weird, but yes, you're not wrong there.
That's kind of wild.
I wanted to go back just to wrap up our John Williams conversation. Can we each name like our 3 favorite John Williams pieces of music? Because it is kind of nuts, like just the amount that he's done. I think I have at least 2 that are like that have to be top 3 for me, but I'm chewing over a third one.
I mean, whatever plays when Indiana Jones like the whip cracks and some guy gets punched, or maybe the power of the punch made a sound exactly like a whip crack because we're working through, Paramount's sound library from everything from the Wilhelm scream to this. And whatever sound comes up after that, whatever version of the indie theme that comes up after that is my favorite piece of music, or at least top three. With like the dun, 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 whatever way they choose to phrase it, depending on like what his action was. If it's a thunderous punch, it comes in big. If it's him slipping out, it's a dun, 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 dun. I just love that.
And let me go off on a little bit of a tangent here, because that's such a great point, that just those couple notes, right? That dun, 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 is used so much throughout the Indiana Jones scores and in so many different ways. And this is something that many composers don't do anymore, which is compose what's called a leitmotif, German word. But the leitmotif is like essentially the character's signature collection of notes. Like, it's not a song, it's not an entire composition, but it literally is like the dun 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 in Indiana Jones that you can then pepper throughout the score whenever you need to have that triumphant moment, or in the case of a villain, a threatening moment. And Williams does that so masterfully, where he threads these different pieces of music throughout the score to really give you the ups and downs of like who's up, who's down, who's winning, who's losing, who turns the tables, because his different characters and the different factions all have their own leitmotifs. The Superman score does that incredibly well too. The Star Wars score does that incredibly well too. The Harry Potter score even does that incredibly well too.
It does.
The Jurassic Park score does that, because like the human characters and the dinosaurs have different elements of the score to them. And that, to me, that signifies a really great composition, is where it's not just appropriate for the mood of the moment, but it makes the movie feel more holistic because of how it's used throughout. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, scoring a movie is not as simple as writing a great score for a scene. The music has to become part of the storytelling. And again, Williams is just one of the undisputed masters of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, just to throw mine out there, the love theme from Superman the movie is one of my all-time favorite pieces of film music in general. And yes, it plays during that moment where Lois Lane starts reciting poetry and voiceover while they're flying together. But if you can ignore that, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of movie music ever written. And it's the da 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 da. And it uses leitmotifs from the Smallville compositions, but it essentially recontextualizes them in this more romantic way, merging them with Lois's leitmotifs. And so in the score, it essentially tells you that he's found his, like, a new sense of home with this woman, which honestly does more work to sell their relationship than the script does in that movie.
Hey,
you know what?
Bill,
you know what, Bill?
Bill.
I will not have you besmirch this writer speaking her poems to. Okay, anyways.
Can you read my mind? Do you know that I can get in the shower and think about Superman all the time, but that I think of this icky guy named Clark, and I go, oh, look.
Listen, if you have any questions about the credibility of that poem, let me recite 2 stanzas for you.
Oh, please do.
You can fly. You belong in the sky. 2 actual lines from that poem.
That rhymes.
And that
I don't
makes
see
it
the
good
problem.
poetry.
I don't see the problem there.
Lois Lane's got bars, people. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Dude, Lois Lane
Let's just change the beat a little bit. Boom, boom,
Dude,
boom,
Lois
boom,
Lane would get
boom.
eaten up in any cipher anywhere. She would get ripped
You
up.
can fly.
Oh my god. But yeah, we were talking about like scores that we like super duper remember and blah blah. I gotta say, I think all of those Jerry Goldsmith scores for action movies, the James Horner scores from like I think Commando and 48
Oh, yeah.
Hours and just weird stuff like that. I love the way certain eras sounded. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And then you see when you get, and I love how, but also love how timeless film music is, because we look at something like Sergio Leone and them's Ennio Morricone's
Yeah.
scores. He worked until he died
Yeah.
doing scores for movies. He didn't have any dated sort of sound. He did the work for the project. If it was a 60s, Western, so be it. If it was a 90s, actioner, starring some B-list guys or whatever, Scott Atkins and Robert De Niro and this thing, whatever.
Did they ever do a movie together? Because that sounds terrible. I would not want to see that.
Scott Atkins spin kicks the shit out of Robert De Niro.
I mean, that would be pretty great.
I mean, Ennio Morricone definitely needs to be brought up for a minute here, because that theme from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, when they're in the Mexican standoff, and it's getting faster and faster with the whistling, which I don't even know if I could do at this moment, but yeah.
I mean, that alone, one of those things it's iconic. It's iconic, period. Yeah. You think of Western, you think of that sound, period. You don't think of anything else.
I would say that is up there with the dueling banjos from the name is running out. Deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
The dueling banjos from Deliverance and the dual notes from Jaws. Like, it's just this ubiquitous music that defines an entire genre.
And it uses the things of that. It does sound like it could have been made in that era. I think that there are certain scores that do take stuff like that into consideration. Not to move off of Ennio Morricone, but one of his sons in this game, Basil Poledouris, who did one of the most famous. You talked about earlier that certain people, he did the score to Conan, he did the score to RoboCop, he did the score to Starship Troopers, just to name 3 out of many. Yeah. But you see his sound through those 3, and I think it's a good lens. But he's a son of Morricone, and he did, when he was using he restricted himself to things that could sound ancient to do the score for Conan.
Oh, interesting.
He was like, look, I'm only going to allow things to be so modern to be played on the thing. So that's why there was a lot of voice chanting, because that's the original instrument. That's why there was a lot of drums. And even like but you talked about temp tracking earlier, people like shooting a trailer or shooting a little bit of a movie and just doing a temp track. People have literally jacked the main bum 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 from Conan and put it on movie trailers for their barbarian bullshit movies to like try to sell it, because there's something that shit makes you feel in your guts. And I'm not going to use all these terms like your balls and shit like that. Whoever you are as a human being, there's something primal that gets up in you when you fucking listen to that score or that part of that score. It's powerful. It sounds like something's coming through. It gives a definite identity, and it sounds old. It sounds like something from prehistory coming for you, like Conan.
No, 100%. I mean, that is such a smart decision when you think about it, because like the sound of drumming is probably our first musical instrument, discounting the voice, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there does have like just a stretched animal skin over a wood frame. There probably is some sort of primal response to that, because it's something we've arguably been doing for 1,000,000 years. You know what I mean? And so
every culture has them, no matter who.
It's ubiquitous across culture, and you would think that like it goes back to humans hunting animals and using their skins to make clothes. Like, that is the same process that you use to make a drum. So the drum had to have been invented very, very early in human culture. So that makes sense, number one, to make the choice. If I'm going to do a movie about this Hyborian age, which is essentially like this lost age of gladiator warrior men, like, let me use a primal instrument. And then, yeah, that idea of just creating a sense of like call and response with your audience, because you know that the audience, those big ass timpani drums just pounding is just going to get your audience going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Ron loves this score. The RoboCop score does a different thing. It is of the it doesn't it sounds iconic, but of like a weird future. Because when the score comes in, it's like bum 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 bum. So it's like so you're scraping across something. It's some sort of section of strings slash smearing across the metal that's part of a drum or something. Some weird stroke is used to make that trill at the end of bum 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 meow, bum 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 meow. Whatever that sound is, it is out of this world. It is metal. It's metal. It's metal as part of RoboCop's theme. You know what I'm saying? As he comes to come fuck with you, or at least it sounds like metal. It gives the impression of metal, almost like when you see people draw 2D metal. And you're like, how the fuck is he getting off that it's metal, that it has a reflective surface just in a few lines?
Right.
That's what Homeboy's doing in the score. And he
Right.
does a similar thing in Starship Troopers with a bunch of military marches. Again, everything in Starship Troopers sounds like military medleys and stuff like that. And that's why I think he's the son of Morricone, because Morricone does that across his entire thing. Stupid Hateful Eight, I hate that movie. But every sound hit in that movie means something. The score's doing a lot to help these basically static scenes in one place.
Yeah, I mean, before we move off it, I do want to say for RoboCop though, that heroic leitmotif, that dun 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 dun, that is like some classic John Williams style composing. Like you can put whatever weird sounds over it and use whatever weird instruments, but that's another one where they use it in a bunch of different points of that movie in a bunch of different contexts, and it means different things, but it keeps coming back because that really is an iconic piece of composition for that character.
So I think along the RoboCop lines, and with that, making a futuristic sound is Terminator 2 and the first Terminator as well. But I think Terminator 2 more likely.
Yeah, I mean, those movies, again, the leitmotif for the Terminator, the dun 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 dun, is used many different times. What's interesting though is like I don't recall either John Connor or Sarah Connor or Miles Dyson, like anybody else, having a real strong leitmotif.
Like music that plays every time they come around, music
right.
Yeah.
I don't remember that either. I'm curious.
And you know what's even more interesting? I'm thinking now about the scenes in Terminator 2 where John Connor first encounters Arnold in the back hall of the mall, and the scene where Sarah Connor first sees him in the hallway of the asylum. I think both of those are kind of atonal, if I'm remembering correctly. Like they're both just kind of like one drawn out note, and they kind of go into that almost like a bomb went off near you and everything drops out and you just have that one kind of atonal note, which are interesting.
Yeah.
Those are like interesting early examples of using that technique, because that would come up big in the 2000s, very influenced by what Hans Zimmer did in The Dark Knight with the Joker score, or lack thereof. But yeah, it's kind of funny in a score that does have such a strong main theme, you don't see all the other characters getting their own themes. You don't see a lot of work being done to like develop that theme into new musical compositions.
Well, I think it's interesting that we're talking about that guy who did both the score for Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, because like Terminator 1, you're kind of doing it for a song, literally. You know what I'm saying? You're just being like, yo, man, I believe in this guy and his editor / producer friend, who I think they're dating though. They look like they're dating anyway. You know what I'm saying? The Galen Hurd
Yes.
and James Cameron come to you and they present themselves as these grown-up business people with their long cuffs, and they don't have money for dinner either and stuff like that. And they're pitching O.J. Simpson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you, and another guy today. And they got all these meetings, and they're just this fly-by-night outfit at that point. And they hire you to do the score really fucking quick on your keyboard thingy for X amount of dollars. And then later, when it's the biggest movie of all time to that point, they come back to you and say, you want to do it again? That's got to be a great ride. We looked it up earlier off air. What the Brad Fidel, the guy who did
Brad Fidel. Here's an interesting fun fact about him. So the Terminator 2 score was like his last big score for movies. He retired from writing scores in 1995 and just went on to become like just a musician. Like I guess he creates musicals now. But I don't know if he has any like big credits as a musical book writer.
Well, dude, but that's the thing. Like, you get that James Cameron money, and then you can go fuck off and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would love to be like, oh, a little known comedian and podcaster, and now recluse. Ed Greer, what did he do? He just sold some crap, whatever. He did something, got some money. And what does he do now? No one knows. That's how rich I am. No one knows. I'm even more anonymous than when I was trying to get famous. No one knows what the fuck I'm doing.
That's like the Gene Hackman mold too. Like, you hit a certain age and it's like, I'm going to write novels under a pseudonym and not tell anybody who I am. Like, that's what he's been doing for the past 15, 20 years.
Yeah, and I bet you they're hardcore. It's like, the old actors that got out of his chair and kicked the stunt man's fucking ass. That's what happened.
I will give it up for Brad Fidel. He did also do True Lies, so that was probably his last big score before he retired, because True Lies comes out in 94. He retires in 95. So I want to get us into some of the bigger names, and I'll just lead off with an obvious one. Alan Silvestri composed the score for Back to the Future.
Huge.
All-timer. Like, I don't know if I could go, like, Jurassic Park and Superman the movie have got to be in my top three scores, but the Back to the Future score may be number 3. Possibly tied, though, with the Rocky score, which we should also talk about. But
oh shit,
Alan Silvestri, comes to prominence on Back to the Future and proceeds to work with both. Wow, that director's name is flying right out of my head. Who directed Back to the Future?
Robert Zemeckis. So
yes.
So
Silvestri proceeds to work with Zemeckis and with Joe Johnston, who was sort of Zemeckis's protege, pretty much through the rest of their careers. And so he's a guy, kind of like you were talking about with Brad Fidel, like, comes out of nowhere, writes the score for one of the biggest hits of all time. And instead of becoming a recluse and doing whatever he wanted, this guy just turned into one of the biggest film composers of all time. Here's the other thing. I don't know that he's ever reached the heights of Back to the Future, because that is absolutely iconic. But I do want to give him props for a movie that we denigrated when we were talking soundtracks, and that is Forrest Gump. Because the Forrest Gump soundtrack is the most on-the-nose, obvious choice of music that is almost schmaltzy in how, just mainstream those picks are. But the score, the original music in Forrest Gump, is fucking phenomenal. And like, you lose it against the backdrop of, I'm on heroin, so we're gonna play some Jimi Hendrix music, and we're in Vietnam, so we're gonna play preacher, senator's son, whatever that song is.
Fortunate son.
Yeah, whatever.
But you know what you just made me think of, though, as a tiny side tangent, but yes, to get back to Silvestri, dude, we got robbed of things like the Jimi Hendrix score. Like, Jimi Hendrix is an old ass man with braids, and he's chilling out, and he lives in Atlanta with 2 wives. Don't ask. And he's just doing this fucking thing, and him just knocking out these ill ass film scores. Like how, like, I mean, just the old age musicianship of so-called star musicians. Musicians are built themselves up to be good, and then the machine says, you are this, you are that, which cuts your musicianship in half right there to fit into this box. And then they make their money off of you until you get too old or fat or both. And then they stop fucking with you. And then you can make all this beautiful stuff that was really in your heart, and you got the money to finance it. It's kind of how it works in music. And I would have loved to see the elder years of somebody like Jimi Hendrix. So some of the guitar gods like Stevie Ray Vaughan, people that died before they got a chance to just sit on their fat ass and make some ill music for some movies. You know what I'm saying? Quincy Jones got to do it. If Quincy Jones was just restricted to trying to produce artists who were trying to make the charts or something, his career would have ended a long time before it did. He made film scores and produced music until the end because it's all one amorphous process.
Yeah.
You brought up Alan Silvestri. Do you know what else he's done?
Oh, I think I know where you're going, but just go ahead. Go for it.
All the Marvel movies.
Well, not all of them, but he did write that
iconic
Avengers theme.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was Alan Silvestri.
And the Cap theme.
Well, yeah, because he again worked with Joe Johnston.
First Avenger, yeah.
And Joe Johnston directed Captain America: First Avenger.
And that theme is a really, really good theme. And actually, I just want to bring up in general, Marvel does a pretty good job with most of their themes.
See, I would argue they don't. That's an interesting point.
I love Iron Man's.
I don't even know what his theme is.
I would argue that they're you know what? I think the themes that Marvel does, maybe even including the work of the genius Alan Silvestri, they're like that meal that you eat and it's present and it's great right then, and then you forget about it, like cotton candy or something that's like not a meal. It's like a thing that is very sweet and good for the moment, but it doesn't stick with you. Because I hum the fucking Iron Man theme right now. I can't do it.
Bum 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 bum.
Okay, I can see it. I can see it now when you get to you get this stuff. But
the Black Panther one, although Alan Silvestri did not do that.
I was going to say that's Ludwig Göransson.
Yeah. We definitely got some Ludwig talk coming as we round out. But the whole point of Alan Silvestri is, okay, you do a bunch of Marvel shit. You do Romance in the fucking Stone. You do Delta fucking Force, and Flight of the Navigator. All this crazy stuff. You know what I'm saying? And he's looking at the voice of each of these movies. And I think the reason why he may not have reached all the super heights of Back to the Future, how many of these other movies are as good as Back to the Future? Because I feel like his themes and his scoring for Predator is pretty fucking amazing. And Predator's pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah, and that uses more of like jungle instruments. You know what I mean? That's more of like woodwinds and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. And even when he gets stuff like the da 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 da, that's where the military guys are at.
Right.
When it gets out in the woods, it does get a little woodwindy and a little bit of a stringy. Gets a little stringy because we're in a horror movie, but it doesn't overplay it too much. Because those are still kind of ancient instruments.
For sure. I do want to give him props, though. We were coming down a little hard on the Marvel movies. I do think the Avengers theme, dun, 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 that's iconic. Like that shit rocks hard. Yeah. So he definitely deserves props for that. Last thing on Alan Silvestri, I always thought if you look at the Back to the Future theme combined with the Forrest Gump theme, which by the way, that's been copped in so many other movies, and that was what he wrote for Forrest Gump. You put those together, that is like, I always wanted him to compose a Superman movie because I think he would get that tonality better than any other composer I can think of.
Okay, real quick. This is worth it. He also did the score for Judgment Night. As you may recall, when listening to our soundtrack episode, I think we talked about the soundtrack of Judgment Night and how forgettable the movie is. Alan Silvestri did the actual score for Judgment Night. That's the score. Dude, I just want to talk real quick about the thing of doing film scores is it's a job. You're not a touring musician necessarily. You're not all that stuff. It's a job. So you get a job, you knock it out, you move on. So your year can be The Bodyguard and Sidekicks, which was his year in 1992. In 92, he does Death Becomes Her, Diner, the short film, I guess, a short film, The Bodyguard and Sidekicks, right? Next year, it's Cop and a Half, Super Mario Brothers, Judgment Night, Grumpy Old Men, okay? So that's 93. 94 is Clean Slate and Forrest Gump. You know what I'm saying?
That's wild stuff,
the
man.
wild vacillation between. He does Judge Dredd in 1995. He does Long Kiss Goodnight and Eraser in 1996, along with the Sergeant Bilko movie. You know what I'm saying? It's like, to be a film composer, it's like, I composes what they puts in front of me. It's fucking Popeye. It's a space movie. It's Predator. It's something beautiful. It's Cop and a Half. It's whatever they put in front of you. You got to come up with a theme. So it's like, what's the theme for the little kid with the busted out teeth that is in Cop and a Half? Scoot doop doop. No. Doot doot doot. Yeah, that's kind of good. And you're just sitting there writing music for this trash with the same vigor as Predator or this beautiful stuff that we revere. It's crazy to me.
I mean, if you think about it, it is a little bit like the elevated version of writing jingles for commercials, right? It's like you never know what's going to come across your desk. And at the end of the day, I don't want to say like you're slave to the material, because you're putting in a lot of creative work, but like you're not doing anything to fulfill you necessarily. You just got to make it work for that movie. And so, it is. That's a great call, Ed. That's something really good to keep in mind, which makes it all the more impressive when a guy like John Williams can turn in the body of work that he has.
Yes.
And it also makes you realize why he can turn in the volume of work that he's done, because it's just like a couple movies a year, keep it cranking every year. Like that's just how it works.
Fucking cranking. Dude, if I was his agent, I'd just be like, oh man, you take care of yourself. Eating that B12.
You exercise it every day. You exercise it every day.
Get that potassium up in you, boy.
You need a banana? What do you need? You need some.
You got some
water?
Orange slices. But yeah, so okay, it's huge names. Alan Silvestri is up there. Ennio Morricone is up there as far as like the biggest ones that ever were. Because Ennio Morricone, I think he did Ronin, and he also did Fistful of Dollars and all those movies.
Well,
like and Ronin in 1992.
That movie's score is actually amazing, and the other one this gets drowned out by the Dollars stuff. But Once Upon a Time in the West also has a phenomenal score by Morricone.
Yeah. No, you're right about that.
Yeah, all movies I've seen.
Terrific.
Well, and then he does stuff with he worked with Quentin Tarantino on Kill Bill. You know, it's just like
Kill Bill's got a pretty good soundtrack. I mean, not soundtrack, score.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, probably both.
Yeah.
It's just I think, I don't know, man. That's just crazy. It'd be like you telling me that the dude who did like, I guess Bernard Herrmann, who did the opening music for Psycho. I want to give him a little shout out because that shit is iconic as fuck.
Back into film history. Nice.
Well, dude, I only remember Bernard Herrmann because I looked up who did the original music that they sampled for the "Gimme Some Mo" video by Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes used to have this song that was like, and it was like, "Yo, I gotta flip it on him. Flip mode is a squad." And then these drums come in, and I was like, that piece of music is iconic. Where's that from? It's from Psycho. The opening part of Psycho when they're playing the credits, and Bernard Herrmann did that. He was a frequent, I guess, collaborator with Mr. Hitchcock.
Nice.
Hitchcock.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines of let's give a quick shout out. Bill Conti was the guy who wrote the original Rocky score, including the iconic "Gonna Fly Now." Like that was Bill Conti.
Oh, which is great. I mean that might be okay. Pepsi challenge. That or the fucking Superman theme for most iconic shit of all fucking time.
That's hard.
You know what's wild too? Both of those, like the Superman theme has now just become synonymous with superheroes. Like you hear that pulled out in spoof movies, in TV, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the Rocky theme. It's like as a triumphant piece of music. Here's the thing though. That Rocky theme, like it was most recently used in Creed 3 in a form that was almost unrecognizable. But when you hear those fucking notes, man, those goosebumps just flow. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
I don't know if I could pick. I don't know if I could pick.
I can't either, dude. And that's what I'm saying.
Hard.
Like Superman.
I literally think of Superman when I hear that.
I mean, the music says Superman. Like that's just unbelievable.
Like it arrives like Superman, like bum, 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 and it's like, and it's like,
Superman. Yeah, it absolutely does say that.
That's what I'm saying.
But I will say this, that makes me think of that character. And as much as I do, and even though it is from Rocky, and I know it's from Rocky, I just get pumped up when I hear da 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 da. I'm just pumped now, and it's because of Rocky for sure. But I don't think of it as Rocky.
Oh man,
if that makes any sense.
I don't know if I can agree with that, because when I think about it, again, it's Rocky's leitmotif. Like they make that so sad in some of the movies, like dun 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 dun, when they do it slow and it's like a tinkling piano.
It's really good.
Dude,
I want to cry right now. It's so good.
Well, at the end of like Rocky 4, I bet you they do it. I don't know that they do it, but I bet you they do it when he's like talking about how he's like low key got brain damage. Or maybe they do it in Rocky 5, when he's talking about like, yo man, the events of Rocky 4 really fucked me up, bro. I literally can't get off the toilet. Like my life is fucked right now.
It's so weird. Those are the exact lines, I believe. They wanted to write that first, but then they, had to cut it out. And
I'm just telling you, I mean, he was really messed up in Rocky 5. That's the only thing that I don't
even know when I'm shitting. I could be shitting right now. I don't fucking know.
Why did he turn Australian for a second?
I don't know. He did.
Oi, Adrian.
Hi, Adrian.
Okay, but yeah, I think it is. I think they're both as equally inextricable. But I'll go so far as to say, as a piece of music, I understand how fresh the Superman theme really is. But the Gonna Fly Now shit is kind of funky too. Like it's got some some parts in there, and then it leads up into this giant orchestral thing. It's like 4 songs in one fucking song.
Oh, that's a good point, man. God, I just want to listen to that now. I'm getting pumped up just thinking about it, because you're right. It does break down into like these complicated electric guitar riffs for like when he's training and failing, right? And then it builds you back up for the end. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. Oh man, so good,
dude. I mean, and that's kind of the point of us talking about these things, is like when you hear the from my man Bernard, Bernie Herm, Bernard Herman,
baby.
When they go or when the birds are flying in the bird, he also did the birds, like I said, frequent collaborator with our round face buddy Hitchcock. I just really feel like these things are in aid of the storytelling. We just did 6 damn hours on Frank Quitely over the course of the last 3 episodes. And what we were mostly talking about was his storytelling ability. Each of these composers we're talking about, I think the best of them, the ones that we're actually talking about, they see it as their job to help tell the story, if that makes sense.
Very much so. I want to mention, just moving us along to another guy who's famous. So Hans Zimmer, I think people, have sort of thought of him as overplayed because he just has scored every blockbuster for like 20 years now. And his music sometimes sounds a little samey in a way that doesn't maybe work as well as a guy like John Williams when it starts to sound a little samey. But there's some shit that Hans Zimmer has done that is just instant classic. And one that maybe people don't think about enough is the Pirates of the Caribbean main theme. The dun 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 dun. That is really, really good film composing.
I mean, he did. I first became aware of him probably when he started doing these huge movies of now, but he was doing Rain Man and all types of jazz like forever.
Yeah,
as kind of a under the radar. Maybe Alan Silvestri, like people in the business know that he's the G, but your average person doesn't know him. Like I said, he's not like John Williams. John Williams could say tomorrow, hey man, I'm playing the Roxy, and people would literally show up to watch that shit. I don't know, Alan Silvestri would be like, I'm over here, I'll sign some stuff. I don't know. In this town, yes, but
Right.
John Williams is worldwide.
Well, it is worth knowing too that Hans Zimmer wrote the score for Gladiator, which is an all-timer, and again, not one of his more new wave scores. I don't know. It's just that guy's had such an amazing career. Obviously, we could talk about Inception and Interstellar.
No, I want to talk about Hannibal because again we got what's that disease that we were calling it? Where Alan Silvestri disease, where you got to put some food on the table, baby. Because Hannibal was a terrible ass movie, and the score is done by this dude who's just a brilliant. He did Last Samurai. I mean, this guy goes high, low, just like anybody because he does so much. What do you think makes these dudes so prolific? Because my man Basil, like I said, Basil Poledouris did a bunch of stuff. But I don't think he did anywhere near as much stuff as a Zimmer, a Herman, Ennio Morricone, Silvestri. What makes those people so prolific? Is it they got mouths to feed at the crib?
So, I mean, maybe. I also think that, and I think you saw it with Hans Zimmer. Like, once The Dark Knight came out, it's just every studio wanted Hans Zimmer to score their big action movie. And I think to a certain extent, especially with music, right? Like, music is a little bit like the old bullpens of Golden Age comics, where Will Eisner was quote unquote drawing all these comics, but it was really Will Eisner and like 10, 20-year-old dudes that he just had in a sweatshop, which is unfair to Will Eisner. But like, I know that's how Hans Zimmer worked.
To those dudes in a sweatshop, but still.
Well, either way. but I know for a fact that's how Hans Zimmer works, because he's had a number of guys sort of graduate from being his assistant to being very successful composers in their own right. So he runs an entire operation over there in Germany. So he can take on that work, because he literally has like an entire production studio's worth of musicians and composers and tech people all working with him. And so it's like, if you become a hot name and every studio is going to offer you every big movie and you have the capacity to actually deliver, like, why the fuck not?
Wow. There are those who kind of know that Dr. Dre is like that, but nobody's ready for that conversation. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we underestimate how much of art works that way in general, especially art that's made for mass media.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of hands on something before it's released for public consumption. And I think that goes right down to the music in the background of your movie, and you don't think about it, but it's true.
Sweatshops, baby. Dude,
I'm not saying that.
No, I am though. Sweatshops, baby. That's where it's at. It's where it's at. Everybody get a sweatshop. That's the American dream. The American dream is to own your own sweatshop. Now, as far as an industry thing, though, I think you're right. What do you think AI is going to write the next scores? Like, honestly, just kind of sampling all the music. Hans Zimmer, a little Williams.
I mean, honestly, I think that's a very obvious place for the implementation of AI.
I don't, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Okay, I'll say this. I think you could use, if you were a composer and you wanted to use AI to help you find notes or that sort of thing for moments, I could see that. I think the problem with AI right now is it's not going to be able to understand human emotion. It might write you a good hook. Like it might pull off a good hook for you. Something that sounds cool. A mix of, if you said AI chatbot, make me a mix of John Williams and Alan Silvestri, some kind of theme from them. He would pull the notes from those two things, find the rules to music, put those things together, and it would probably sound pretty decent. But I don't think you would be able to punctuate human emotions and push things with AI yet. I don't think it's quite there. maybe one day, but I don't think it's there yet.
I don't know. I mean, I think you're not wrong, but also like how perfect a manipulation of emotions does a movie producer need to say that a score is good enough?
Okay,
You know what I
goddamn
mean?
it, Bill. I don't like your thoughtful way of destroying a composer's lives.
Well, no, nor do I. But it's a little bit like I loathe AI art for any number of reasons. But I also recognize that like as soon as AI art isn't generating the most fucked up hands you've ever seen, it is a viable alternative for illustrating anything from like sci-fi magazines to movie posters. And I hope that doesn't happen. And I would say the same thing about AI art. Like it doesn't actually know what it's doing in a way that can like speak to the nuances and subtleties of a story or even of what an image is supposed to say. It's very shallow, but that never stopped anybody trying to make money before. You know what I mean?
And real quick, I think the thing the sad part about it is, Ron, it uses how deep we are to like enhance it, right? So because when people look at this AI portrait of their dumb girlfriend, they go, "Oh shit, look how beautiful she is. She looks so plastic and sort of just damp, but also well coiffed and thinner than I remember her. Wow, look at all this I'm giving it, you see." And it doesn't have to be shit. It's just a collection of bullshit. People's leitmotifs of many millions of people's art. But it's a Rorschach test for you. And so in that same way, if a computer knows that so-called flats are sad and so-called highs are this or whatever, it can go, okay, appropriate number of flats, appropriate number of sad sounds,
Well, and if you think about it, like music is the most mathematical art form. Like music is just all about rhythms and patterns. You know what I mean? So to a certain extent, I do think that just sort of a dumb AI analysis of music probably could produce something, if not genius, serviceable. You know what I mean?
Well, this last on this particular topic, because I hate the computers are taking over our minds to the point where they don't even have to be present, even though we are all literally directly looking at computers. The thing that's interesting to me about all of that shit is that like the its ability to translate emotion. I think you're right. That's always going to be its downfall and all this kind of shit. But like, I feel like we all as artists, whatever kind of art you're in, I think we're all just trying to take our art and save it from AI and throw somebody else's art in front of it. Even when me and Bill were talking about AI, Bill was like, "Yo, I'm not gonna use it to cheat on my art, but I can use it for my own process and I can refine it." And then I think we both talked about like if we could use it to like fix our cars. The mechanics over there like,
100%.
"Hey, what the fuck?"
Well, I mean, that is the dirty little secret of AI. Is everybody's like, well, yeah, you could put so and so out of business. I don't give a shit about that, but just don't do it to me. You know,
right? So like we're visual artists. So hey, man, make a film score with that shit. Throw somebody else's baby into the gaping maw of the machine.
Right?
Okay, listen. Listen to this, guys. To this moment while you were talking about it, I signed on to Chat GPT, and I put make an action movie score with John Williams and Alan Silvestri style. Like, obviously, it's not making a score right now because that's not one of the things it does. But check this out. There's a title to the thing. It's called Rising Fury. Composers
dope already. By the way, I'm buying a ticket.
Seriously, composers John Williams and Alan Silvestri. Opening sequence, intense chase scene. Fast-paced brass and string ostinatos create a sense of urgency, accompanied by pounding percussion and driving rhythms. Blaring brass fanfares add drama and excitement, while rapid strings and woodwinds add tension. Epic choir vocals soar over the orchestra, adding a sense of grandiosity to the chase. The music builds in intensity as the chase progresses, with sweeping melodies and powerful percussion hits driving the action forward. Main theme, hero's theme, a heroic and uplifting melody played by the brass and strings with a sense of triumph and determination. Orchestral swells and cymbal crashes highlight key moments of bravery and valor.
Yep.
A sense of adventure and daring is conveyed through fast-paced string runs and dynamic brass flourishes. I mean, it's got like a whole thing for combat scenes,
I mean,
dramatic
that hero's
moments.
theme just is the Superman theme. Like, that's just what it's describing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that was instructive because it just shows you it isn't about how far machines are from replacing us or whatever. Because when you really look at it, each of those instructions, every single instruction in that could be interpreted a billion different ways. That's why that fucking thing can't do it.
Yeah.
And even when it can, there's billions beyond that. Maybe the cool thing is it'll create billions of compositions for us to avoid. Like, it'll create so many compositions that we'll hear so many AI compositions that we'll start to have an ear for AI music, and then it's just racism again because I ain't listening to AI crap. All right, now look, let's look at some of the shit's most iconic themes. We looked at Superman by John Williams. I'd like to bring into the James Bond theme, which is the fucking shit.
Yep.
The James Bond theme is the shit, and we've been this long without talking about it.
Who composed that? We gotta give them proper props.
Monty Norman did that. I'm looking it up right
Monty
here.
Norms. Love me some Monty Norms.
Yeah, me too.
M.
He's
Norms.
one of my favorites.
That guy, M. Norms. But yes, he did that shit. Obviously,
He drinks mail. He drinks beer, and he delivers mail.
I'd like him to drink mail.
Yeah, he
deliver beer.
He delivers beer.
Good times.
But yeah, no, I think that the James Bond themes last because it does have all the stuff we were talking about from that Chat GPT thing. It has like the orchestral swell, and like the horns are where you get kind of the bodiness of James Bond. Like, the horns aren't just triumphant; they're also a little bit one out. Look at me. I'm in a car. I'm doing 360 drift, shooting a bunch of guys. There's just something swaggy about how the horns come in on there, in my personal opinion.
No, I agree. I think that there's like a Lothario aspect to that entire thing. Like, it feels a little seedy. You know what I mean? Like, it feels a little underhanded. It's like it's not telling you something.
Dude. Oh, and obviously the Braveheart score, guys.
Oh shit, dude. Thank you. That is so worth bringing. One of the greats of all time. Who composed that?
My main man, James Horner.
James Horner is good.
Yeah.
That boy good. James Horner good.
Well, no, we haven't really talked about him yet, and I think we should spend some time because he also, again, for a movie you kind of take or leave, the Avatar score is really good.
I mean, it would have to be. It's getting over a bunch of bullshit. You know, it's like lending so much emotional heft to what is essentially a bunch of bullshit. So it has to do like a lot of. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm saying everybody knows how facile that story is and stuff. It's just, you know, what? I'm not,
What's funny to me is like there's a guy on my feed who went and saw the second Avatar like 16 times on my Facebook feed and literally says it's the best movie that's been made, and Avatar 1 is the second best movie. And I just think that's funny because Ed is right in my opinion, but that just shows that opinions are weird.
Yeah, no accounting for taste.
And taste is subjective. Something happened to him. He was like, look, man, I think people with too much body hair, too much specular diffusion did something to him. So he goes into this world where everything is free of body hair. everything is in the ocean. It's slick and smooth. Even the leaves are slick and smooth, and everything is just like a dolphin's butt. And I think people do love to be in that world. They did say that Pandora induced stuff in people, like they wanted to go back to living in that world. I think people are just susceptible to that, and it's like Star Wars too. So shots fired, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Dude, you're right about James Horner, by the way. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the stuff he's done. Troy, A Beautiful Mind, even The Mask of Zorro, which is way better movie than people give it props for, is amazing. Jumanji,
48
Titanic.
Hours and
He did,
Commando. God damn it.
Yes.
48 Hours at Commando with the steel drums.
and
Damn
he did
it.
Titanic. He did fucking
Yeah.
Titanic.
he's a Cameron guy. That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I do want to get here's a more out of left field, pun intended, one of Horner's works, and that is Field of Dreams.
Yeah. I was going to
The
bring that
Field
up.
of Dreams score is incredibly sort of mystical, understated, not at all the big pounding drums, and it is so good. So that shows his range, his versatility as a composer.
Oh, yeah.
Cocoon?
Ephemeral. Oh,
Holy
and
shit.
The Legend of Zorro, and I mean the Mask of Zorro and the Legend of Zorro, but the Mask of Zorro as well. Like when you look at the teams, like when you start to look at these filmmakers and these composers, you can start to see how they're placing the teams up. Like if I was in hindsight, the guy who directed Mask of Zorro directed like James Bond movies before and stuff. I'm like, okay, put the James Bond movie movie guy with the score guy that's handled everything from 48 Hours to Predator to American President or whatever, all this different crap. I don't think he did American President, but he did something else.
Sure.
He did Clear and Present Danger. So
yeah, see
enough.
shit like that. Yeah, there you go. He can handle this if you give it to him. You can see it click, like the different teams click, and then like you're saying, Bill, I guess sometimes people just decide you're my guy. You can communicate. Like when I shoot the scene and the lady just sort of falls behind the curtain and it doesn't look very dramatic, you go and you make it go, baby.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I think we as viewers don't often appreciate, like, obviously we know that directors and cinematographers will work together a lot, but honestly, most directors, they will work with their entire team, the cinematographer, the production designer, the costume person, the composer. Like, it's very seldom that you see a director who will have any department head different on all of their movies.
Yeah.
Because it just makes the process, it streamlines the process so much. And again, the director's voice is really the accumulation of all those other people's voices. And so it's like, if that's what you're paying for as a studio, and if that's what you're trying to achieve as a director, you got to bring all those people along with you.
Yeah, because they get your voice if indeed you have one,
Well, right.
But yeah, so any other like, because obviously we talked about big themes from our lives as pop culture geeks, male pop culture geeks. Maybe there's other pieces of music from other movies, like somebody's like screaming at their thing, the Out of Africa soundtrack by some damn body, probably James Horner or somebody, or Alan Silvestri. But you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, there's
to that point, I just want to point out, like, one of the off the beaten path soundtracks, or scores rather, that come to mind for me is The Lion King, the original animated version of The Lion King, written by none other than Hans Zimmer. He won an Oscar for it.
Wow. That's crazy. Hans Zimmer does a kids movie. Also, a Mission Impossible is Ennio Morricone music too.
Oh, really?
The Mission Impossible theme.
Yeah. See, it is funny how
wild.
The deeper you dive into this, you're like, oh, it's just a handful of dudes. Like all of this great stuff from all these movies, because they are all such workhorses, it's not like it's a huge pool of people that you're pulling from.
Oh, and John Barry did Out of Africa. I think John Barry also did a lot of James Bond music after that original guy. You know what I'm saying? Supplied the theme. I think John Barry got on there and did a lot of music after that. But let's talk about Howard Shore, who did a billion tons of shit, including Lord of the Rings, because that's a lot of music for your ass. I don't, and I'm stepping outside my body, because everybody within the sound of my voice knows I don't really fuck with Lord of the Rings like that. But I'm not gonna front on that music. That music was very involving. It made me feel, even though I had no connection to any of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Howard Shore I think he's won Oscars for original song as well, because he's writing those songs that appear within like both the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies. I don't know much about him, so I'm going to look him up real quick. I obviously have great appreciation for the Lord of the Rings music. Apparently, he's a Cronenberg guy. He's collaborated with David Cronenberg on all but one of his films since 1979.
I just the only one that really affected my life until I started really looking into it is the Silence of the Lambs. His score for Silence of the Lambs is one of those things where it's like, I think it was one of the original ones where you don't think about it too much, but it puts you exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, it's an unsettling score. Just looking up a little bit about Howard Shore, he was the musical director for Saturday Night Live in its early seasons.
Wow.
And he was the one who actually came up with the name the Blues Brothers for Aykroyd and Belushi.
Wow.
Yeah, none other than Howard Shore.
Dude, and he did Seven and The Game.
Ooh.
And those are two of my favorite two of my favorite David Fincher scores. So there's that too. Like the fact that he was able to get that new generation, because he's been around for like a while, you know.
I will give him props. He did Gangs of New York. That score, you want to talk about some like era appropriate music, kind of blending that old like Irish diaspora sound with some, snare drums and trumpets for the America sound. Like there's some really unique, especially for a Martin Scorsese movie, because that one has no diegetic or soundtrack music. It has lots of diegetic music, actually, no soundtrack music. So Scorsese can't do his needle drops that he loves doing. It's all period specific. And so that's a lot of work being done by Howard Shore that's really good.
Dude. Oh, dude, he composed the score of The Cell too. Man. That score was pretty good. That movie is not very good, but that score was very arresting at certain parts. You're just like too busy watching a music video to appreciate how dope the music was. But yeah, he scored Mrs. Doubtfire too. Like
that's actually a great score.
He's got range.
That's pretty impressive, because comedy. Well, that's interesting. Who does the most comedies? Let's talk about that.
It's funny because you don't often think about score in comedy, and now that you mention Mrs. Doubtfire, Ed, like that actually does have a great score. I'd put that right up there with Chris Columbus for Home Alone. Chris Columbus directed Home Alone. John Williams frickin' scored Home Alone.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. All these years I did not know that. Yeah. I've never fully processed that fact that movie had that going for it too.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the home run. For as much as that movie had working against it, I think hiring John Williams to do your score, that is possibly the only comedy I could think of that has that iconic of a, you hear 3 seconds of it and you're like, oh yes, that movie,
Mm-hmm. Did you look up a list of top comedy scores, Ron? Top comedy scores.
Actually, I'm looking up who did the score for A Christmas Story.
Oh, that's got to be like a TV composer or something. That movie was so low budget.
Carl Zitterer and Paul Zaza on Apple Music. Wait, no, that can't be right.
Carl Zurcher's a name I recognize. Maybe I'm thinking of a comic book artist.
I don't know. Well,
Patrick Zurcher is a comic book artist.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. He's very active on Twitter. I got clear lines at the and we've already accounted for about 20 minutes that homeboy shit was fucking up.
So it is. What I was confused about was it's on Apple Music, and it is Carl Zitterer and Paul Zaza who did the music from Christmas Story.
It's funny how comedies are really more associated with soundtracks. It's like you think about the needle drops in comedies, way more than you do about the scores. which doesn't mean they're bad. They're just more workmanlike. Like they just kind of get the job done. And you know what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Actually, I like those Adam Sandler mid '90s movies, like Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, Big Daddy, things like that.
Yeah.
Like the score is very present, if I'm remembering those movies correctly. It's just they don't actually do the work of leitmotifs and, you know, marches and this and that. It's like it's just there to kind of punctuate. Oh, you feel good when you feel good. You know, it's funny when or you laugh at these funny parts, and then this is the menacing part when the villain glowers or whatever. You know, it just doesn't have the meat on the bone of a lot of these other scores.
Yeah.
A guy named Randy Edelman did the score for Billy Madison, and then he also did Twins, Ghostbusters 2, Kindergarten Cop, Beethoven, Gettysburg, Dragonheart, and Triple X. Hey,
Oh my God.
Oh,
Look at this guy.
yeah, that's interesting.
Can you be a C-list composer? Because
He is.
that's dope. Okay. Oh, but finishing off with somebody A-list, I think we should just talk about somebody who has come up on the scene recently and is that dude and is very good. And I think his name is Ludwig Göransson. That dude is for real the shit. And I think he's gonna go down like one of these Quincy Jones types, these John Barrys, these guys we're talking about, the James Horners. In the end, it's gonna be like that, man. John Williams, even. It's gonna be like that, dude, because he's working with the top brands already, which, make no mistake, is why John Williams is in everybody's goddamn mouth with all these big brands. Beyond his talent, it's these big brands.
No, very much. I mean, and I think he's unique in that he is actually a very in-demand composer for pop music. You know, he does hip hop and rap and pop, but he now is getting bigger and bigger. I mean, you know, not only has he worked with Coogler on everything that he's done, but he was freaking hired by Christopher. It was the first time Christopher Nolan hadn't used Hans Zimmer in like a decade, when he brought on Ludwig to score Tenet. That's a very significant thing when you're replacing Hans Zimmer as like the go-to partner for one of the biggest filmmakers of the generation.
Yeah.
Oh,
and he also did Warner. He also did some Star Wars stuff too.
He composed at least the pilot. He may have done the music supervision for the whole first season of The Mandalorian.
So is he the guy who came up with boom boom boom?
Yep.
Boom,
yeah, he came up with the music for Mandalorian, and I think he remains on the score of that. Actually, I just think they kind of probably have some of that Dr. Dre and that Hans Zimmer going on as far as like applying the different shits. But I think what's dope about Ludwig is he is able to make something iconic, because that Mando thing, every time Mando does anything, that fucking whistle plays, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love
so
it.
Good.
And the whistle is part of it, because it's like the screech of a falcon, but then the bass of like a big man. So a big man and a screeching falcon come at you. That's him and his jetpack. That's him and his ship. It's like these two forces, like if a bear and a falcon could attack you from two sides at once,
both on cocaine.
That's the Mando thing. Yeah, yes, that's the Mando theme.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to what he does with Oppenheimer, because he is working with Nolan again on the new one. And that could be really awesome. I mean, one of the things that I remember as really, you know, I knew he was Childish Gambino's producer when Gambino came out with his first album, because he actually name checks him in one of the songs. He's like, I put in work, ask Ludwig. And everyone was like, who the fuck is Ludwig? Because at that point, Donald Glover had pulled him. He was composing for Community. He was a TV composer. And Donald Glover collaborated with him to create Childish Gambino. But the thing that really put me over on him was I saw some sort of a behind the scenes making of for Black Panther, because he composed the first Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. But for the first one, he spent like 6 months in Africa, traveling from like village to village, recording like folk music from all these different villages and like learning to play their instruments and things like that, just to get as authentic a sound as he could for that movie.
That's crazy.
It is crazy that white dude stole black people's music. It is crazy.
hey, if Elvis had to win any goddamn where and sat in the dirt and learned anything, we wouldn't hate him so much. I know that to be true.
100%.
We treat that motherfucker like the white wolf.
Let's also take time to acknowledge Ludwig is not American. He is Swedish, and I don't know what the history of exploitation is like in Sweden, but it has to be better than America. That's all I'm saying.
No, I think they just didn't allow them in there. No, I'm kidding. I don't think that's true.
It could be true.
Oh no! Oh no! Why do I got to make jokes, Ed? Why do I got to make jokes?
Those ones. So here we go. In the end, let me find the place where I can do the edit. Let me see.
But he is great, to be clear.
I just really appreciate the Mando music the most. I just think it really is timeless in a way because of that tradition of like using Western-y sort of instruments with a little bit of a Eastern flair, and all of his world traveling gathering of all these different instruments and all these different time, even the time signature for the different music, the different stings that he uses. I think they just have a little bit more flair than your average person who grew up with, this is a sting and it's a set of strings and this chord and this is how you do it and this is how many violinists you need. He's going like, I got one oboe dude, a dude who plays bones and a fucking synthesizer, and I'm gonna do the sting with that. I think there's something to that when you listen to the music in Mando. I think it's doing a lot of work, honestly, to get some emotionality across that may not be in some of those performances. Okay, moving along.
Well, I mean, especially, but not even taking anything away from the actors, especially when your main character has a helmet on the whole time.
Exactly.
And your second lead is a puppet. You
Yes.
need the music to do some emotional heavy lifting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So how we got to wrap up? Oh, hey, you know what? I just wanted to mention one thing from my youth: the score to Lady Hawk. It's done by like the dude Andrew Powell from the Alan Parsons Project or some shit. I didn't have that name. I just looked it up. But Jesus Christ, that shit sounds so contemporary, meaning 80s. And the movie is set in like the medieval times.
Yeah.
Lady Hawk's score is so incongruous. I think it's up there, dude. It's up there. And like, why does this sound like this but look like this? I think there are only a few scores that really try to go against the grain. Like, imagine if Blade Runner just was made of cave instruments.
Yeah, that's a good call. Which, by the way, I've always felt that way about the score for 2001, which is all the classical music, where it's like you're trying to tell this very futuristic sci-fi story, and you're using music that was like Beck composed in powdered wig days. So I love that sort of incongruity. And you are right. Lady Hawk is one of those weird ones that, like, for people of a certain age, you refer to it a lot. And then people outside of our age group are like, what the fuck is Lady Hawk? Because it's not necessarily like a big blockbuster from the 80s. It is a little remembered Dick Donner classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do want to bring up just one of them that I think is one of those things where I don't think this guy has done much else, but he made Friday the 13th, the music for Friday the 13th. Harry Harry Manfredini made the sound track for that, and he did a couple other things, but nothing that. Like, it's known for Friday the 13th and then Deep Star 6, House, and the Omega Code. So, like,
I'm seeing Swamp Thing, 1982's Swamp Thing in his filmography.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. And I mean, really, but when you nail one thing, that thing is that Friday the 13th is an iconic sound. You know,
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about. I think that counts as an iconic sound. Certainly, like if they finally pick a sound for. You know what's fucking crazy? They don't have a schnicked sound for Wolverine's claws. The last 15 fucking years, they've been watching him ease out of his fucking claws, watch him ease out of his fucking knuckles at this measured pace. There is no there's no schnicked, there's no nothing. They don't really have one that should be iconic in your head. As many Wolverine movies as we've seen, the whoosh, whatever that sound is, it should be like the Bionic Man sound to you, and it isn't.
Or like firing up a lightsaber, you know what I mean? Like it's that
yes,
iconic.
yes,
absolutely.
It should be like that, but it's not, because they fucked up somewhere along the line, and nobody addressed that there's no schnicked sound. That's schnicked is Wolverine. I'm sorry. If you took all those word balloons out of all those panels, I don't think they're as arresting.
Maybe our next audio-based greatest pod should be best sound effects. Most iconic sound effects from movies. And then we could talk about the ones that should exist but don't.
Yes. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
How are we going to do an hour on that? Well, we did an hour on this. So
please. I think we could do 2 episodes on sound effects. You don't realize until you get into it that, like,
that's true.
Every conception you have of what a laser or a spaceship or even a fight sounds like,
and like why do lasers
roaring?
It's all fake.
Why do lasers sound like, some of them sound like choo choo, and some of them sound like choo, like they have that extra layer of, because they're hitting a fucking pole thing.
Oh, how about the dinosaur roar in you know what, you're right. We're gonna have to do a whole nother
greatest fucking sound effects. But anyway, as we dismount out of this one, I just want top five actual themes in your opinion. We got Superman, we got Jaws, we got Indiana Jones, got James Bond,
Rocky.
Gotta say Rocky, yeah.
Okay, that's 5. Is there anything that can unseat one of those 5?
I was just going to
especially
say,
from our perspective,
the Jurassic Park theme, which I would just consider the T-Rex's theme, might be in the running there.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Look, man. I mean, I still think the Emperor, the Star Wars.
Oh, the Vader. Yeah, the Imperial
Vader
March,
theme, or
Vader
just the
theme.
regular Star Wars theme.
Okay, what's it gonna knock out of those ones that we listed?
That's tough. That's the problem,
dude. That's how hard it is. Because like
we should do a bracket.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll do a voting bracket in the comments or something.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, there have to be some that shine above the others. I think James Bond and Superman are up there. If we're just talking about things that are utterly recognizable, you're chopping through the bush in Tanzania, or you're fucking chopping through the bush in fucking Papua New Guinea, and you play this, and somebody knows exactly what the fuck you're talking about.
You know what's interesting? I mean, Mission Impossible might actually qualify if that's the thing, right? Like,
and you know, we didn't fucking talk about at all the goddamn Batman score. Not the soundtrack. The Batman score is coming through with really big energy.
Yeah.
Listen, we got to give it up for Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman's been a little off his game of recent years, but Danny Elfman wins forever on the back of Batman 89 and the Simpsons theme.
Yeah.
That motherfucker composed the Simpsons theme.
Don't forget Nightmare Before Christmas.
Dude, I think he did the Tales from the Crypt theme too, which is a banger.
Did he?
The Tales from the Crypt theme is a banger. I'm gonna look it up, make sure. But oh man, he's great. Danny Elfman's great.
And the Beetlejuice theme.
Yep.
I mean, that's
I think the listeners right now are the thing that they've enjoyed the most is us actually singing the theme songs. So,
look, we don't want to get a copyright strike on this podcast, so you're going to listen to us hum these themes. That's how it works.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
But yeah,
it has been awesome.
Danny Elfman is a champ, dude. Batman theme versus Batman theme, Superman theme, Rocky theme. I think we're experiencing a theme here. That like
Yeah.
these outsized superheroes need this. It
Yeah.
symbolizes who they are, you know.
Yeah.
So
Which,
like,
by the
yeah,
way, interesting that we've got two big DC characters, but I'm not going to make an argument that Iron Man or Captain America or any of the other characters' theme songs bust into that as iconic, which is pretty interesting if you think about.
I mean, if we're doing this conversation in 70 years, maybe. But maybe these other themes would have become even more iconic. If you strike me down with obsolescence, I shall become more powerful with classicism.
Yeah, I mean, let me throw this one out there.
Ba-da-da-da.
As long as we're talking Danny Elfman's Spider-Man theme might
Man,
be the most iconic Marvel theme that we've got going.
Oh, shit.
just wild. Because like Rod can't even hear it because he hates those movies. No, I can't.
That's true.
What is it? Like I can't hum it right
So
now.
think about the TikToks of the guys who like drop something and catch it.
Oh yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the more heroic version that is not coming to mind right away, but it's got that real Danny Elfman like rolling, fast paced drums. But I'm just thinking of like that simple trumpet. Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of that trumpet though, got to give it up for whoever did the score for The Incredibles, because The Incredibles had to be music that mimicked the superhero era,
I think
the
that was
spy
Michael
era,
Giacchino,
and
who
all
we
that
also
shit all together. Oh, Michael Giacchino did the new Batman, which is just the Imperial March with some rain on it. The new Batman theme is like bum 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 bum. But wait, what? Bum 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 bum
bum, bum, bum. Yep.
And that's the rain falling on it. That's not some kind of R. Kelly ASMR.
Oh no!
I made bad jokes here, Ed.
Goddamn!
You got to keep that shit in. Don't you edit that out, you son of a bitch.
So Giacchino did do The Incredibles, and worth noting, Michael Giacchino has done he did the new Mission Impossible movies for J.J. Abrams and the new Star Trek movies for J.J. Abrams.
Oh, see, a young bull. So yeah, okay. We picked basically the top iconic ones. Now we're drafting our young bulls coming up. So Goranson, that dude, what? Tyler Bates.
Ooh, I don't know.
Will they be humming the John Wick theme in 40 years?
Oh man, I don't know about that one.
I don't think so.
Michael Giacchino, though, gets special shout out. He has transitioned from being a composer to being a director. Directed Werewolf by Night.
Yeah, he knows what's what. He wants to push somebody around and give them 4 weeks to do something impossible. He's like, sign me up.
So I want to mention a couple of themes that I maybe we won't include, but I do think they're kind of interesting to mention, and that's the Pink Panther theme.
Oh,
dun 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 dun.
Iconic, fully iconic.
And then Shaft.
Oh yeah. Isaac Hayes himself.
Yeah, we actually mentioned that on the soundtrack episode because that titular song tells the whole story of the song. But yeah, he did the score as well, I do believe.
Yeah, he did. So I don't know. I just wanted to mention those two themes for characters that I think are good to include, and maybe they won't quite. I mean, arguably they climb into iconic as. I mean, Pink Panther's got to be as iconic as Gonna Fly now, doesn't it?
I mean, Pink Panther is an amazing piece of music that I think it only suffers from being a little bit obsolete. You know, it's like you just haven't heard it in a long time for many reasons.
Yeah, I think Star Wars themes and certain superhero stuff, if it isn't too dated, like nobody remembers the music from Swamp Thing 81 or whatever. Although we earlier in the record we actually looked up who did that, but nobody like remembers that in specific. It's a piece of the time. But that's the whole point of anything classic, right? Casablanca was made with the same means, the same screenwriters, the same actors, the same sets, the same everything as 200 other movies that year. Those movies are not Casablanca because something magic happened that hasn't, been reapproximated. So yeah, I think these themes, I think Star Wars is up there, dude. I don't even fuck with it like that, but Star Wars themes make you feel something in your belly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If
I mean,
you're of a certain age.
I think top 5 is hard to narrow down, especially if you're talking about like just iconic characters or iconic franchises.
Yeah,
And it's
10
also
you could do.
Yeah, maybe 10, maybe. I also
Mm.
want to throw out there, sorry, this is my last from the bleachers shot, but a guy who really doesn't have a lot more to his resume is Don Davis, who composed the music for all the Matrix movies.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
I mean,
nice.
and you want to talk about a score that maybe is going to suffer for obsolescence, as you put it, Ed. Like, I don't know if the Matrix score is really going to be appreciated 50 years from now, because it was never about like themes in the way that we've been talking about it. But for a score that inarguably enhances the movie, tells the story, puts you in a sense of time and place, like that score is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think we can do it. I think we can do it. I think we can do the top 10. Okay, it is. I got a document open it. It is motherfucking Star Wars in no particular order. Star Wars, Superman, Indiana Jones, James Bond, Batman.
Yep.
Right? Okay, that's 5.
Yep.
Now, what are the
Rocky.
ones that are left?
Rocky.
Jaws.
6. Did we do Jaws? Did
Jaws.
I say Jaws? Okay, 7.
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park is 8.
I would say Pirates of the Caribbean.
All right, well, we split the difference between that and Back to the Future, right?
Shit, I mean, I kind of feel like they both need their own place on this list if we're going best of all time.
If we did Back to the Future, Pirates, I don't know if I could give you that. I'm the holy tribunal in this. Okay,
I mean, listen, you have a bias because of your age, but I'm telling you, like, that is the most memorable score for people like 25 and under.
Okay, well, that's too bad because I'm putting Conan in that spot. Too bad.
You fucking Conan, bitch.
Conan ends out as 10. Because dude, come on, Conan is very iconic. People have sampled it, derived a bunch of stuff from it. People temp stuff with it, and I think it's Basil Poledouris has to be on this list somewhere. I'm sorry, but we didn't use. Is Ennio Morricone on here? Mission Impossible, right? We put that on here, right?
You said you were keeping the list. You said you had a document open.
I was just using my fingers. You saw me use both of my fingers. But yeah, I think he made it on there. But yeah, if not, we'd have to move something around. I guess Basil Poledouris would get knocked off if we didn't put Morricone in there. But either way, I think that's a good basis for like the type of music that we find iconic. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the type of music that people find iconic in the future. But one thing you can do from a far-flung future is look at your review that you left us about this podcast. You can look at that from way the far-flung future, because Apple's going to last forever, as Rod said a few episodes back. So please leave us a 5-star review. We read those on air. It'll make you an icon.
Absolutely. And also, join our Patreon. That also makes you an icon who helps us pay for our StreamYard account. So we really appreciate that. If you want to join our Patreon, it's patreon.com/thegreatestpod. You get extra podcasts and art and all that good stuff. You can choose a tier. Get on there. The Greatest Pod. patreon.com/thegreatestpod.
And as always, thank you for listening to this symphonic, composed, epically moving episode of The Greatest Pod.